The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
On TECHxploration, your trusted tour guides, Craig and David, will explore every corner of Florida for the latest tech and innovations emerging within our communities as an inside look ahead at Florida's future.
Hello, this is episode 16 of TECHxploration on the Florida Podcast Network, and we are recording with Riverside.fm. Here, we are discovering the tech and innovation spaces thriving under the Florida sun. I'm one of your hosts, Craig.
And I'm David, and we're from Clarity Creative Group, an Orlando-based digital marketing agency. Let's do it.
On today's episode, we're going to dive into a tech headline all about curved screens that move on their own.
Then James McQuiggan of KnowBe4 tells us all about the world of cybersecurity.
Of course, we'll end the episode with this week's tech tip from Nicole Gonzalez Cumberbatch of the Motherhood Village. David, not only do they have the curved screens, right? Let's talk about desktop monitors, TVs, they're curving them, but now you can have one that goes flat and then curves and then goes flat again. What is happening?
You know, I was like not as pro curved screen until I saw this. And it's a screen that could be flat. And then you press a button and then it becomes a curved screen. So it could be either flat or curved. You don't do it by hand. I guess there's a hand one that came out a little bit ago and now it's automated.
I see the LG OLED Flex is what this product is. It's either already just came out or it's just got announced, right?
Yeah. I think it's like, I'm sure probably for the holiday season could be one of those things. But we're seeing it with the phones, right? The phone that like folds up into like a little compact
the
thing.
Samsung.
Yeah, it looks like
this
like
new
a
Samsung
clam,
one,
like a clamshell,
Motorola.
right?
Sorry,
you know, it's that new technology now that you could have literal screens that fold up. It's crazy.
This is blowing my mind. Screens are not just curved, not just foldable. They're now wearable too. There's apparel companies. Nike's been working on
like
integrating
type
screens.
Of thing,
yeah, this stuff is crazy. But for this particular application where we're talking about a monitor that can curve, what are the benefits of curved? Is it just for gaming people? Is it for like those high level traders? What's the benefit? Is it better on your eyes? What is it?
Eye fatigue in what you're doing. So I guess if what you do does a lot of eye panning and things like that, the curved screen is more natural, I guess, to the eye flow. And I'll admit I was not the person that was interested in a curved screen because what I heard was that some things are better for a curved screen, like maybe a gaming or something that like, if you read a lot of like full width text type of thing, could be good. And well, if you could switch from the two different types, I mean, that's great because now you could do it depending on how you're interacting with your screen, depending on what you're doing.
It's the best of both worlds. It's the best of both worlds because you can change that dynamic of how I guess it's really just light, right, is affecting your eye. I'm here wearing, people don't see us on video, but I'm wearing those blue light glasses because it really has helped me avoid headaches. And if there's some technology coming, I'm not saying this is that, but if that's part of, as we're learning, of how can we make these screens better, because so much of our lives are in front of screens these days.
Right. So less strain on our eyes, better experience, maybe less headaches, maybe just general eye fatigue, right? Especially when you're like you said, you're on it all day. What choice do we have? Might as well say, and it might not be for everybody, right? The curved screen might not work, right? But that's not how you view things. But I mean, at this point, I kind of want to give it a try.
Same. I'm super hyped about it. Sounds like you're about to order one for us. I'm jazzed. Oh, we got a fun one, David. We are here with James McQuiggan. a podcast producer, a security awareness advocate, a professor at Valencia. Literally, the list goes on and on. But I gotta start. Many of you listening wouldn't be able to see this. We're able to look at one another. There's a shared interest. Before we even dive into technology, we were looking at one another due to the technologies of Riverside, if you will. And James noticed that I was a Hamilton fan, and David's a Hamilton fan. James, you're a Hamilton fan. How you doing, and how did Hamilton come into your life?
Great to meet you, Craig and David, and excited to be here on your podcast, talking all things tech. And we're probably going to end up talking a little bit of theater too, because my career started out in theater. You ask anybody in the tech industry, IT, cybersecurity, information security, whatever you want to call it, and none of them started out in that field. They all came from different avenues, different fields. And for me, my journey started in theater many years ago. It was in high school. It was either theater or computers. And I went with theater, and I was a techie kind of guy. I liked the lighting and the sound and the stage management and loved working on musicals. And I made a career. I worked at an opera company in Orlando for several years, and it was great. However, I got to the end of the 90s, and I'm looking at having a family, and I love the theater lifestyle, but it just wasn't going to be what I wanted with a family. So I got back into computers. Computers led me to programming and applications and building computers and networking got me into security, which got me into cybersecurity, which is where I've been now I've been doing IT cybersecurity for the last 20 plus years, pretty well all in Orlando. And it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, theater is very much a part of my family's life. We've been up to New York. We've seen a lot of the Broadway shows. We've been to see Hamilton. We saw Waitress. We've been to see Come From Away, Something Rotten, Little Shop of Horrors. We went up at Christmas time when we saw that, and hoping to try and get back. But my daughters are both now over the age of 20. One just graduated from University of West Florida. The other one is going there.
Congrats.
Yep. Go Argos. And so it's kind of hard now as a family to keep doing the Broadway trips. But right before COVID, my wife and we got to go up and we saw Hamilton. I took her to see it. She hadn't seen it yet. I had seen it in Chicago, and then we went and saw it in New York. But my daughters got to see it originally with Lin-Manuel and the whole gang. They saw it within...
No!
Yeah, you saw it within 4 months of it opening. We knew about the show. My daughter was nuts about Broadway and all the stars. And we remember when it was at the Public House. And once it got onto Broadway, then it was like, could we get tickets? And back then, they sat in the last row of the house, and those tickets were $300. And, I bought them the 2 tickets, and we gave them the 2 tickets to go. My wife and I were like, we'll go later. This is important for them and their journey in theater. So they got to see the original cast. And then we met them all after the show, because we do the stage door bit. And had a blast, and they loved it. They were loving Hamilton before Hamilton was cool, in my opinion, because all the kids at school were like, yeah, we know Hamilton, but no, we like whatever musical they were into at that point. Theater's very much a big part of our lives. Love this theater, love musicals. That's kind of the side.
But you said you were into even the tech aspect of theater when you were doing that. So I'm just curious, were the seeds of what you now do for 20 years, whether it's that you're being a security awareness advocate for KnowBe4, which is, again, an integrated platform for security online, specifically things like that, how did it come to be that way? Was it that things you were interested in, the opera side of it? Because when we went to Hamilton in Orlando, we got lucky. We were given a backstage tour, and we saw even how intricate things were working on the stage. And then there's these intricate sound panels now and things like that. So was for you a natural progression where people don't think technology in theater, but there is some there. And is that what drew you, or is it so totally separate?
It was kind of separate, I think. For me, honestly, back in the day of computers, when I was in high school, it was programming. We weren't really building a lot of them. It was more of the programming aspect, and that was fine. Theater, again, I guess it was the technical aspect. It was the lighting and the sound, and it was just, I was the AV guy in high school. And that's that's a chapter of my life I like to keep closed. The AV tech guy. Oh, well, we knew what they were all like.
Yeah, we won't poke.
But yeah, so the technical aspect was always there. Even when I was in theater, we were doing sound editing using a computer. I remember doing some of the early edits and making sound effects using a computer. So that kind of carried on with me. I always had a love of computers back since my day of the Commodore VIC-20, the 2 kilobytes of RAM. that was in there. And so that's always carried through with me. And now even with the technology coming into the theater with the lighting systems and the sound systems, I mean, the soundboards are, it's all computers built in, and they
Incredible.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredible. Plus what they're doing with the lighting, the AI work and the programming they can do into that with the different lightings and LEDs, it's incredible. And when you go see a show like Dear Evan Hansen, and your audience may or may not have seen the show, but the way that show is, what's that? Yeah, I know Greg's been to see it. But the show, that is all. And I think there was another show where they used projection screens to do a lot of the scenery. And so that was really incredible, having that level of technology and the computers that go behind it. You look at some even like stadiums, those big, huge screens, the technology that's in there, and how they're able to create that. And it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as I thought it was going to be. But seeing the lighting technology improve over the years from just, glass and a really expensive bulb that you can't put your fingers on it because the oils will make it explode, to the LED lights and the programming and the capabilities. One of the great things with theater and my girls was when they were in high school there in Orlando, I helped design lighting for them at their high school. And that was kind of tapping back into my old days. And it was a lot of fun, and got to go down to Dr. Phillips for the awards. They have the applause awards for the high school kids. And my daughter got to win one, and they were crazy enough to give me one for my lighting design for one of the shows. So that's incredible. That was kind of a nice, cherry on top, helping my kids. Cause I got out of theater for like almost 15 years before I got back into it with them.
It's like a full circle, really nice kind of arc to the theater journey, right? Like, and you being able to do that on the lighting side scratches that tech itch, because lighting even then had a technical aspect, but now it's more than ever. So clearly things that relate to technology come native to you, right? How else could you be teaching other people about it? You're a professor at Valencia, going into security specifically, but could you speak to a little bit more? I mean, Valencia's in our backyard. We know it well. We were UCF boys ourselves, so it's all in the same family, right? Valencia, Seminole State, and UCF are pretty much the three big ones here in Central Florida that really represent. So what is it that you're doing over there? What are you helping people get through, and what is kind of the thrust there? Yeah, definitely. With UCF, that's where I did my theater. I was at Valencia for a few years doing theater, went over to UCF, and now teaching back at Valencia. And it's great because you've got Valencia, you've got UCF, Seminole State. There's even ECPI University up in Lake Mary. So there's a lot of great schools in the area. For me, one of the things, being in the industry for so many years, I also am a chapter president for the IAC Squared Central Florida chapter. It's a professional networking group for cybersecurity professionals and even IT folks as well. And I had got to do a presentation at Valencia, and I got to meet the staff and the faculty, and they were working on a new program. At that time, it was called Identity Security, how to make sure everybody were keeping themselves secure on their smart devices, smartphones, whether it's tablets, the internet, your computers, your Wi-Fi, your routers, all that stuff at home. And so getting involved in that, and I started teaching that. It's now morphed into what's called cybersecurity operations. The course that I teach is the entry-level one, getting into learning how to secure Windows, how to use Linux, start using Linux, secure it. And then we actually look at Wireshark. We're looking into the network packets of the network traffic that goes across, our own home networks, school work networks, internet, and so forth. So that came about, and I think I'm in my 4th year teaching, and it's a lot of fun. It helps the next generation. I've always liked to try to be able to give back, especially in the cybersecurity realm. The chapter does part of that. Teaching is another part, and meeting the students. I still have some of my students reach out to me and go, "Hey, I was in your class a couple of years ago. I just got the certification." And I'm like, "That's fantastic. That's great." I've had a couple of them get jobs in Central Florida, which has been even better, following them and just seeing them come back around and go, "Hey, loved your stories, loved your class and what you were able to provide." Because when I'm teaching, there's all the course material and they get that, but I try to give them the real world stuff as well. And the faculty and the staff that's at Valencia are fantastic, as are UCF. I've got teacher friends over there.
But for me, just to try to bring my experience, share my stories, one of the great ways of getting a message across is through storytelling. And so I've had the pleasure of having all kinds of fun stories with regards to cybersecurity attacks, incident response, IT, doing networking, setting up networks at power plants for remote access and making sure those are protected. Because we always hear the stories of cyber criminals trying to hack into water treatment facilities or power plants.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't even know that. Now, you said a few things that totally resonate with us, like literally the storytelling, right? And part of our story that we're always trying to educate, and this will resonate with you because you're doing it. You're literally doing it. Whether it's our clients, David hosted a webinar a couple months back that was really all about online scams specifically and trying to help people avoid them because they're so prevalent. But James, because you had a 20-year history, David, I wanted to ask you too, because while we're not security specialists by any means, David, you've been coding for 20 years. When James was talking about like learning different, he even referenced Linux and stuff like that. David, on our end of things, what levels of security were a part of your journey when you were a teenager versus now?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of what you learn as more the developer side than the IT side is about finding flaws in your code that others can pick apart. Because as much as you need a good network to protect you, but if the network does, have a break in there, what are you doing to protect yourself? And does the code allow it? And how can you know when somebody's in there? And inside of web, that we're serving a lot of stuff to all across the internet and stuff like that. Are we making sure it's, HTTPS and things like that? So that way there is some security that hopefully, when James is looking at those network packets, he's not seeing somebody's credit card or their login password, which I'm sure he knows, see plenty of as he's shaking his head. So it's things like that. But I'm sure there's things that an IT expert brings to that table because a developer has some vision of it, but having a good IT setup on top of it is like the way to go.
It's huge. It's a partnership. And I think I'm taking the opportunity to connect those dots for any listeners and some small business owners that do connect with this podcast. I think one of the craziest things over the years, and we've been in business now, I think like 13 or 14 years, we get asked all the time to do stuff that's technically in your wheelhouse, James. And I don't know if that's the same as you. You as the IT security side, people will say, hey, fix my website, the user-facing one, and that may or may not be in your wheelhouse. Is that something you've experienced too, where there's almost like that disconnect in the market between the security and the network side of things versus the actual like user-facing, I'm on a website?
Yeah, when we start looking at the vulnerabilities, whether it's in websites, web applications, or applications themselves that are running on our mobile devices, nowadays we're seeing so much go into the cloud, everyday operations, everybody's putting stuff in the cloud. The misconception becomes, hey, we're in the cloud, we're secure, we're all right, because it's with Amazon or it's Microsoft or it's Google. And the misconception is similar to what we had years ago. Back when people would put firewalls, they would have their computers in their offices and they'd install a firewall and they'd have antivirus and they'd go, okay, we're secure. We can't get hacked. And that's never the case. And the cloud is a similar repeat of that because they put all the data up there. They think, oh, nobody can find it. It's not behind our domain address or whatever. But you've got, we'll call them security researchers, but then you also have what I call cyber criminals. Everybody may think of them as hackers, but for me, a hacker is somebody that likes to take things apart, figure them out, and put them back together again. Good, bad, indifferent. That's what your hacker is. So I say cyber criminals when it's people doing things for nefarious reasons, for their own reasons. And so cyber criminals will constantly be searching, looking for these open containers, S3 buckets or whatever. Mm-hmm. And pretty well every week there's a new story out there that, gets discussed. Somebody's got a database sitting out there. We had Neopets, a child manufacturer got breached, 68 million records stolen.
Oof.
Because of whether that was through a phishing campaign, cyber criminals trying to utilize the human aspect to get somebody to click on a link and gain access, or it's going to be unpatched software sitting exposed to the internet, exposed databases. And there are guidelines out there for programmers for web applications, what's called the OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, that actually provides guidance for when you're developing web applications, what you need to check for. Okay, when you got to make sure you don't have exposed ports. You got to make sure that your identity and access management is locked down, and maybe even using multi-factor authentication, MFA. Doing these different things, making sure that your containers are locked down. If you are putting data out on the internet, that it's either scrubbed, or if it's, you're doing QA or testing. When it gets into production, that's another thing. But essentially going through and ensuring that you've got the right security programs in place to be able to protect all that. But a lot of the time you get the shadow IT. You get people that are sitting there going, okay, well, my computer is all locked down, but I can visit Dropbox. I'm going to go upload the files that I want to work on at home and put them in there. And their Dropbox is not secure. And you have somebody that, has a username and a password, and their username and password from a prior data breach, and use that to gain access. And lo and behold, that information then gets exposed along with all their other data they've got sitting in their Dropbox folder. So yeah, shadow IT is the other aspect where folks, it's like running water or a water leak. Water is going to go the path of least resistance. And when people are trying to do things, they will figure their way around it with that path of least resistance, where they don't get caught, figure out ways to get data out or to do their job because, oh my God, security is hindering my job. And not realizing or understanding the why aspect. Sorry?
No, it slows things down. And unfortunately, people see that as a hindrance when it's like, no, I get that there's a 30-second delay because you have to do a multi-factor authentication or you have to have your phone on you. But it's like the reason why that's there and it's a nuisance and maybe it logs you out all the time is because it's trying to keep everybody's information safe.
Right.
I think because we want that 3-second, 5-second quick lifestyle that we haven't been trained that it's like, no. There should be some steps in place that adds a little bit of security to keep everything safe.
Let's dive in on that, though. Let's dive in on that to the point of like awareness, security awareness. This is this thing, right? Education in an industry, if you will. I'm not even bringing it up just because it's literally one of your titles because you do many things. I'm bringing it up because how do we, and this ties in because I think part of your answer is going to be some of the things you're working on, but how do we let more people know about these things? To what David, the point he just made, it becomes annoying to people to have to do that extra step when the reality is it's that and other steps like it can save them literally money, time, headaches, all that. So how do we do this awareness thing, James?
How much time do we have? So
let's go.
Let's go. Here we go. So as David was saying, I always like to use car analogies to explain certain things because everybody pretty well drives, right? We all have cars, unless you're in New York and, you're taking the subway or the buses. But, way back in the 50s, they came out with this new thing that they started putting in every car and standardizing them, and people hated them, but it was saving lives. And it's a seatbelt. Now I got to take the extra couple seconds to reach across and plug in, and it gets at my neck and it feels tight and it's just so uncomfortable. I'm just not going to wear them. And because there were people having car accidents and people dying, unfortunately, because of it. So they came out with seatbelts, and then the government mandated it. And then you were getting tickets if you weren't wearing it. But it took a generation, really, if you think about it, to I remember being a kid many, many, many years ago, sitting in the back seat, sitting in station wagons. And I can see Craig and David kind of smiling here. They know, you sitting in the back of the station wagon and you're bouncing along. We didn't wear seatbelts. The only people that wore seatbelts were in the front seat. Nowadays, everybody's got to wear the seatbelt. Everybody's got to, car doesn't move until everybody's got their belt on. It was a cultural change. It took almost a generation to do that. And I honestly feel that is where awareness, that is where when we kind of look at, you don't have multi-factor authentication. Well, I'm not using it. We're a way away from getting there. And it's going to take that cultural shift. It's going to take government mandates, and it's going to take time because I can get on, we could do a whole hour on me talking about security awareness and being aware of phishing links and why you should use a password manager and why you should use MFA and go on and on and on. But it's going to take a culture shift for folks to be aware that this is why it's important, because we want you to hover over a link or check a website link when you go to click on a link that you get in an email. and you want to check it so that it doesn't turn out to be malicious. And then you have to have that understanding of what you're looking at to make sure that if you go to that it is real or it's not real. And having that behavior change where you start using a password manager because you need to keep track of all the passwords. Now, Microsoft, Google, and Apple are getting more involved with trying to figure out ways to get rid of passwords. Because when we start talking about multi-factor authentication, and I mentioned it earlier, MFA, where you have something like a password, you have something you have could be smartphone or a key, and then something you are, which is biometric. So it could be a fingerprint reader like you have on a MacBook or in Windows, and so they're reading your biometrics to add additional authentication. If we can get away from passwords where, yes, there is a password, but then if you've got your smartphone with you and you authenticate to that, it will log you into that website because of technology. And that's where the technology comes in to be able to help people get logged into things when it's really them and not a scammer or a cyber criminal gaining access into your computer because you clicked on a link and provided them access. Because for me, anybody that's got an email address within an organization has a key to the front door for that organization and can arbitrarily open up that front door. You don't get to see the cyber criminals walking in. And they get in, they start working their way around, getting from computer to system to the servers to the data, and then start that whole process. And you and Craig, David, and myself, we can all sit here and go, yeah, you got to be aware. You've got to go through and do that. And you give the people the training and they go through and they do that security awareness training. Well, then so what? Okay, I did it. I watched the little videos. It was great. It was engaging, played a little game, did a quiz at the end that may be common sense, that may be a little tricky. But then so what? Okay, we'll see you all in a year. I'll do it again a year from now. It has to be something that becomes a part of the culture. Just because I'm aware doesn't mean I care. And for case in point, we'll go back to the car. You're driving down the highway. That speed limit says 70 miles an hour. How fast are you really going? You're doing 75, you're doing 80. You know what the speed limit is. You know the cops are there, but you take the risk that you don't get caught and get that speeding ticket. Same thing applies here. And we're dealing
Absolutely. And the risk can scale, though. The risk can scale just like in a car accident. It can be your whole life. That can actually be one of the risks. Here, it can be your financial life. It can be literally your social security number.
Personal emails, personal
everything
about you,
social media,
everything, anything you typed, anything you put on your phone. I mean, it's available for bad actors or cyber criminals, to James's point. But in the awareness sense of how do we let people know? Because here's my thing. Here's my weird thing. We were talking about, it's not weird. It's just I'm the tech idiot, if you will, out of our relationship, mine and David. I see an email. I sometimes think it's real. I get a phone call from Apple. It's not really Apple. I'm getting confused. I'm the one. What is part of, how do you help people like that, like me, not get scammed? That's the question. I mean, it's so self-serving, but James, how do you help dummies like me from not making my own mistake? You said password manager. Love that, right? David got me LastPass. I think that's one of them, right? Is that a good, we don't like that one. James doesn't like that one. We might have to switch to another one. So tell us, how can we help the most people knowing about this?
No, and that's certainly a good point, Craig. No, I winced when you said LastPass because they had a breach the other week in their open source. Some of their code got exposed and got put out there. So you can't see me, but basically covering up my Know Before logo on my polo shirt. This is me. My recommendations, 1Password's out there. You got Dashlane. You got Defender, you got Bitwarden. There's a lot of great ones out there. It's just go through, do some research, find out what the company provides. But they all do the same thing to be able to protect your passwords. Now,
sure.
How do you get people to care? How do you get people to have that awareness or, figure out, is this really a phishing link? And I'm going to throw another analogy and another fun story because this has happened. You go to New York City and you're walking down the street and you see somebody come up to you and they open up their coat and they go, hey, you want to buy a Rolex? If it's too good to be true, it usually is,
Right.
I'm going to sell you these Rolexes. I got them for $20 each, 50, maybe even $50. And a Rolex is hundreds and thousands of dollars. It comes down to awareness. It comes down to getting that training and then caring about it and being aware of it. I get an email that comes in that comes from my boss that says, hey, we're using a new cloud provider for our data storage. Click on the link to get more information. This is my boss sending this to me.
Really?
I meet with my boss every single day, and we have a stand up. This is a know before thing. We do a stand up every day with our team. Everybody's working remotely from home, so we have to meet every day just to kind of touch base. And depending if you're working in an office or you're working remote, hopefully you're meeting with your team. If your boss sends you an email that says, hey, we're moving to a new cloud storage provider, do you think that your boss probably would have told you that ahead of time? Hey, be aware there's an email coming through. Maybe they didn't. Maybe you don't get to talk to your boss very often. But personally, at that point, I got an email from my boss. I wasn't expecting it. I know them, but they're asking me to click on something. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open up my my communication window that we have, or a program that we use internally. I'm going to message them, or I'm going to text them because, you have that kind of a relationship, and I'm going to verify. Let's say I don't know the person. Let's say out of the blue, somebody emails me and goes, hey, this is Joe from Microsoft, and we've discovered that there's a virus on your computer. We need to run this scan. Let me do that. Okay. Again, this comes from awareness. One, Microsoft will never contact you. They are so busy. If you really think about it, you can't even find a phone number for Microsoft online to call them for tech support. But the situation here is you've got people that don't have that awareness. Computers could be brand new for them. I've turned to my daughters, they're in their 20s. I'm like, if Microsoft called you up and said, hey, or sent you an email and said, hey, there's a virus on your computer, what would you do? And my daughters went, well, I'd call you, which, that's their,
because they have me. Not everyone has
Not
you.
Everybody has me, right. So, I would ask their friends, what would you do? And they would go, well, I would either reach out to an IT person or check with a friend, or I would just ignore it. And I would, then take my computer to somebody that could help me check it. I'd look at another way. Some of them did say I would probably click on the link.
Oh, I bet, right? I have fallen prey to that myself as just an easy, user of it. It took me years and David educating me over time it made me more, dare I say, suspect, where I learned to the point you just made. If the phone is ringing and it's saying Microsoft or Apple or Amazon, they're not doing that. That's actually not a part of those companies' policy. In fact, it's quite the opposite if you go online. So I got into the habit myself of straight ignoring. Like, if I don't know your number, it ain't getting through anyway. You'll probably leave me a voicemail. But is that really the only way? And is that why you're putting out podcast content, putting out, any kind of text content, why you're really not just an advocate, but like you're on the PR team of a company that does this at scale, right? Yep. So talk to me a little bit about that initiative. Cause I love that you gave the one-on-one of even the 20-year-olds versus every spectrum of age, but Know Before is doing it on a larger scale, right? And how do you guys execute that? There's no end game because tech iterates, right? There's no end game. It's an ongoing thing. I know that frustrates people. In our industry, it frustrates people because they're like, why do I have to pay for SEO, for example? I'm like, well, Google changes the algorithm regularly. So it's one of those, kerfuffles. In your role with Know Before, how does that allow you to reach even more people? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, exactly. With Know Before, the company started up about 12 years ago, and Stu Showerman, who is our CEO, he was running an antivirus company before that, and he retired. And in his 3 days of retirement, before he started up Know Before,
three.
Yeah.
Three.
In the 3 days of his retirement, he was contemplating his time with this antivirus company and realized that people were still getting hacked. People were still getting breached. And he realized that it wasn't the technology's there, and the technology is a good layer of protection, but you've got way too many people opening up those front doors. And so that's why he started Know Before, was to have a security awareness program that people could buy and make it more engaging. And that was his thing, was he wanted to make it more engaging, make it more relative. We now have, a mod store where we're able to reach, have all kinds of different content so that different industries can have different content that are suited to them to educate them and make them aware. And that's still that first step of getting that awareness, getting that security awareness training to them in the organization so that they can then take it home. But now we're kind of we're in like a security awareness 2.0 is what I like to call it, where we're looking at the culture. It's not just a matter of training you, because I can train you and I can educate you, but if you don't care about it, then that's a problem. It has to be something that becomes a part of the culture. And you have to have that constant learning. This isn't something where we're going to give you the training and we'll see you in a year. There has to be other things. And this is kind of where we got to get more cyber risk awareness in organizations, whether small, medium, or enterprise organizations. When you've got board of directors that aren't even worrying about it, going, well, that's an IT problem, but it's not. It's a people problem. When you've got to get people to be more aware and learn about it, so that when that Microsoft email or that Apple email comes in, or they're pretending to be your boss, that you can look at that and go, there's a link in here. I don't know the person. Let me have a look at the link. Okay, the link looks fine. Having that education to know what you're looking at on the link, what you're expecting, and then having the technology that can come in that goes, okay, we're going to scan that link. We're going to look at that link first and see if it's a phishing. What's the destination? And there's technology that allow you to do that, that can look at that and go, okay, the destination, that website looks a little suspicious. There's some strange Java code that's on that site, or, there's something that's going to come back through that we don't like. The technology of doing the sandboxing. That technology is going to help you, but you still want to make sure that you've got people that are aware, that can check the link, question it, have a little healthy skepticism. And that for me is a lot of it, and you said it before, Craig, when the phone rings and it's Microsoft or Apple, I'm not going to answer it. If it's important, I'll leave a voicemail. And that's kind of where our culture is kind of shifting to, where I'm the same way. If my phone rings, my cell phone rings, and I don't have you in my address book, you're going to voicemail. And I'm not answering it, because a lot of the scams that are going on out there as well, where they'll call up and you pick up the phone, you go, hello, and then you don't hear anything. That is a scammer on the other end going, okay, check. There's a person on the end of that one. That isn't, some computer or other thing. Now they know there's a human that answers the phone. Okay. Give that to the next department in their criminal organization. And they go, okay, hit them with the Microsoft. Or they sounded like a senior citizen, somebody in their, later years in life. We'll call them up. We'll hit them with the Microsoft scam. Tell them their computer's infected. Get them to go through stuff.
James, it's like, I got to hone in on what you just said, because like people don't realize you've been using words like phrases like cyber criminal or criminal organization. And I'm not trying to fearmonger here. I just think that there's not enough information out there. There are literally rooms of people that do this, and at scale, meaning all around the world, there are individuals that their enterprise, they're probably paying some of those people on the phone. It's like they're doing it like a business and making it. They're attacking people. I've known people in my personal life who've been hit with some of the phone ones where they get you to do different things. And to your point, that's what resonated with me. They'll ping to know that there's a future opportunity that now, like, they can be dripped on, if you will. That person can become a target for multiple things. And I bet that number gets sold. And I bet that email gets sent to other organizations that are doing that same thing. And it's so frustrating because no one person can keep up on all the things that are going on in tech. Like in our own industry, it would even be difficult, David, and I'm not trying to put you under on this, like it would be difficult for you to keep up on every single thing that all of the people in tech are doing that would affect our web development, right?
I agree.
Every single thing.
Yeah. No, I can't.
You can't.
Impossible.
And you're ahead of the curve for most. You beta test stuff from Google. Like you're that dude, but you can't even. So how does a regular person take that in? To me, it's that curiosity to learn. Maybe it's, and I'm going to lead into this, of understanding like your podcast that you produce, Security Masterminds. Is that something for the layperson? Is that something more for the expert level, that they're going to really take things to the next level and become their own security solution? Because for me, I have a David in my life, and many people in your life, James, they have a James. That's a big benefit, but you guys happen to be tech specialists. And I know that y'all know you're in that 1% or less of people that really understand those things. So is that why you're putting out content? Is that the reason? I mean, I know it's why we're doing it on a small scale. It's a monthly webinar, but speak to that if you could.
Sure. Yeah. So looking at the training, when you get within an organization, organizations that buy some sort of security awareness training gets their users to understand, okay, these are the dangers that are out there. Again, trying not to the fear mongering, but these are the dangers out there. This is what you need to do to be able to protect yourself. It still falls back to the human and that culture for them to go, okay, I need to make sure that I'm checking my links. We'll pick on that one for an example. If your organization has a strong security culture or is developing a strong security culture, then you link that into performances. We're going to be sending out phishing emails, simulated phishing emails once a week or several times a month. You have to report 80 to 85% of those back to us. You can't just be going through and going,
Wow.
I don't know what it is, and just delete it. There has to be that education where it becomes a part of what your job is. Security is everybody.
So you're testing people.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't know this existed. You're saying that your company comes into, is it small organizations too, or only like enterprise level?
Everything from small to enterprise. Yep. Yeah. We cover all the industries, everybody from healthcare, education, manufacturing, whether you're small, medium, enterprise organizations. And we've gone through and studied, we've got over 50,000 organizations that we support right now, millions of users. And we have found that when you go in, you do a baseline assessment, figure out what your people can spot right out of the gate. And right out of the gate, you have 1 in every 3 people in your organization is going to fall for a phishing link if they haven't been trained. Once you train them and you go about 90 days, now you go to about 1 in every 6. So depending on the size of your organization, that could still be a lot of people. After about a year and you get down to about, and you keep doing those simulated phishings and assessments, you'll get down to about 1 in every 20 people, 5% of your organization. That is a lot more manageable for your IT folks, for your risk folks, for your board, your CEO, CISO. That's a lot more manageable risk for them, for that organization, because now you're going through and you're using the latest and greatest phishing emails that are coming through. At KnowBe4, I get phished at least twice a week, and I have to report the ones that I see that are coming in that are phishing. Now, here's the transparency. One of the things at KnowBe4, we are radically transparent. It's kind of one of our mantras. I've been successfully phished by our own company 3 times in the 3 years. The first time it was because my boss sent me an email that said, hey, we're getting a new cloud provider. And
You've heard that before.
The stupid thing was I put my thumb on the link and it popped up and said, do you want to open this up with Safari, Chrome, or there was a third one? Well, I didn't do either one of those, but because what happens is it goes out and caches from Google that information on the page. So that was considered a phish and they got me. I'm like, all right, I don't think it was, but that's fine. The second time it was a Zoom link. I was on a phone call waiting for a customer at 11:59 and I got a Zoom email that said somebody was waiting. And I was like, what the heck? And I went over and I immediately clicked on it. Why? Because I was worried that I was going to miss the customer and didn't want to be late. And I was also rushed. The third time was, this was a good one. Third time was we'd had a big holiday party and they sent out a link. Hey, the pictures are uploaded. Go check them out. And I didn't check the link.
Of course they did.
I was like, oh, pictures.
Of
Let's check.
course they
Because
did.
I saw the photographer and
They know, like
Yeah.
not just your company, but even the bad actors
They
out
will
there.
know.
They know human
Yep.
behavior.
Yep.
It's human behavior. but
curiosity.
They're coming at us that way. And the way you made it sound, it made me think of like movies, right? Like Catch Me
Yeah.
If You Can, where like you find out the person that does that terrible thing and then you end up hiring them, right? Like to the point of the hackers, like you guys are using the actual stuff. You're deploying what would get them to protect them, right, David?
And I think, James, your honesty is great, because I think even, to admit that, and I've clicked on links myself and went, was that was not your real UPS link?
Our
What was I
CEO
thinking?
has done
Because
it
like,
too. Yeah.
what's that?
Our CEO has done it as well.
Yeah, because we are.
happens.
Yeah, it's going to happen, and you said that,
Yes.
and I think that's the clear thing. It's not that it's not going to happen; it's when it does happen, and
when
you
it
have
does.
everything in place to protect yourself and to be
Right.
aware of it. And I think your honesty is awesome, because I think people would be like, "Well, I'm fully trained. Of course, I'm not going to get it." But like you said, they're using social things that, like, if you posted, hey, just had our holiday meeting, well, it's like, cool, I'll just email James a link and see if he clicks it, because
And see
you
if
could
it
use
clicks
that, or
on
you
it,
just
yep.
moved into a building and it's like, hey, it's
Right.
the property manager, make sure you pay your water bill here or whatever. And you're like, because people put it on social, people put it in places, and you never know who's going after you, unfortunately. But
And
awesome.
so for me, and it's funny because I came up with we've all heard the 5 stages of grief, shock, denial, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. Well, I came up with the 4 stages of phishing grief. The one that's not in there is bargaining, because you can't bargain with the IT folks. But essentially, you get through initial shock that, oh my God, I clicked on the link. What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. Holy cow. Oh gosh, it was a work phishing simulation. Then it's denial going, no, but I clicked, and I said, and you heard me say it before, no, I clicked on the link, but I didn't open up it in the browser. That's still a click. Then you get into anger because now you got to do the training. Oh, man, I can't believe I fell for it. We get angry with ourselves because we sit there and go, I'm smart. I'm a smart person. Why? I shouldn't have fallen for the scam. Because you think about going to New York and falling for the scam and buying a Rolex, right? And you go realize it's fake. You learn from that. And as humans, we learn from that. We learn from our mistakes and we move on. And then finally you have the acceptance phase and people go, okay, all right, I'll do my training. So for me personally, when I get an email that comes in on my phone and it's a little suspicious or I'm not sure, I will wait till I get back to my desktop computer. Then I can properly hover over the link with my mouse and not rush. I get an email that, again, the skepticism comes into play, but I get an email from my boss. Something looks kind of weird. I want to click on it. No. I'm going to wait till my desktop so I can properly check it. If I'm in a rush, I will honestly now stop and go, okay, hang on. If it is a customer, they won't be upset if they got to wait 30 more seconds or another minute. When it comes to our email, this is going to be kind of weird when I say this, but we've been doing it wrong. When we get emails that come in, we're constantly trying to clear out our inbox. It's a status symbol. I only got 3 emails in my inbox. I have like 5,000. I don't care. It has to be something with your email that you have to treat that as a very sensitive piece of equipment, very sensitive piece of technology. Yes, we use it for communicating just like any other tool out there. When it comes to like hammers, yeah, you hammer in a nail, it can build you some awesome stuff, but you can also hurt somebody with it or kill somebody with it. With your email, yes, you can use that to communicate and receive offer letters and communicate to family and friends, but it's also how cyber criminals get you to fall victim to their attacks. And so you have to be aware if you don't know who it is, if you're not expecting it and they're asking you to do something in a strange manner, or it's strange to begin with, take the extra time to go through and verify that email. If you can verify with the person, if it's important and you delete it, well, they'll come back, and ask you again later on.
Are you giving me the carte blanche to ignore emails from my business partner because he's probably trying to phish me? Is that it's what it sounds like. It sounds like I should no longer have to open up any emails that trigger me to feel like we might be threatened.
So here's the funny thing. If somebody rings your doorbell right now, do you go, oh my God, I got somebody at the door, and you go rushing open up the door immediately? Or do you take a little healthy level of skepticism? If you know that David's coming around to see you, then you're like, oh, that's probably David. Let me go up and see. And you see it.
I love that analogy though, because I am the no. I'm the actually, I'll just not even go to the door, because these days, this day and age, the things I've ordered, the things I've want to show up, they're going to leave it. And the person who really wants to speak with me is going to knock again. My wife may be on the other side of it where she's like trying to drop things and go. I'm like, that person over there is either going to wait till I get over there or what? Because you don't, and this might be where you were going with that. And I love this because your analogy is you're baking them into the real life experience, because for most people, the tech side is where it gets intimidating, right? So the thing is, if you're rushing to the door or rushing to open the email, you're technically more emotionally vulnerable in that moment, exactly. Right? And therefore, whether it's that salesperson who's coming with solar or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a model. It's a model that is very effective on the human psyche. And I know that was a point we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. And I was kind of soft pushing to find out, is it that obviously we can go direct to know before if we're an organization, but what about for individuals? Is that why you produce the podcast, so that more individuals can kind of learn? Like where do you think it fits for a person that doesn't own a business to get that kind of awareness?
So shameless plug, Know Before, we do have a home course for folks. They can go visit, they can Google Know Before home course and you can learn that kind of information. It's kind of like anything else in society. The expectation is we're going to educate people in their places where they work. And that information will then be passed on by word of mouth to other people so that everybody else can eventually get the training, hopefully from Know Before or, what other organization that you're using. In society, we learn about things that's good and bad. And then we spread that word through social media, word of mouth to all of our friends. Hey, did you know that, so I got fished last week because I fell victim to it. Oh, what did you do? What happened? And then people learn from that. So, you're going to get a lot of it. Either the other places I would really love to have it is in schools. Get kids educated.
Oh, yes.
And that's where it's lacking.
Start early.
Get it early. My wife's a school teacher, semi-retired. And I would go to her 5th grade class. It's been over 10 years, but for about 5 years running, I would go to their classes and I would give them like a 40-minute conversation about how to be safe and secure online. And that was through the work that I do with the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. Another way that I give back. But through them, they had a program where I would go to schools, and I went through several of them in Central Florida to give this presentation to the 5th graders. Your smartphone, you're posting images online in Instagram and Snapchat and whatever else. Do you want those pictures being shared, or are you sending one to a friend and then they're posting it and sharing it? Because once you post something online, it's there forever. Don't put anything on the internet that you don't want grandma to be upset about. Mm-hmm. Or you want to appear on the I-4 billboard, and folks here in Central Florida know what that's about. Or you don't post anything online that you wouldn't say to somebody's face, that you wouldn't want on a billboard, because a lot of people think, oh, I can post it online. I'm not going to be held accountable, or they can't do anything about it. And that's another society discussion. But
yeah, where human behavior keeps going almost down the wrong way. You said something though that resonated with me, and I wish, and it's not a wish, it's we're doing it, right? Not even just you in your daily job, even this very podcast, the podcast you produce. I wish for all to have better security literacy, better financial literacy. These are the things that if eventually could come and be a part of it, it really does sound like the things you're working on, right? And we will make sure that in the show notes, there's stuff there that people can get to those things. Because I didn't know that Know Before had a home program. The Security Masterminds podcast available on Apple, available on Spotify. It's available pretty much wherever podcasts exist. People have to turn a switch, I think, in their minds with this stuff. It gets intimidating for people, but the reality is, if we can turn that curiosity knob, it's easier when they're younger. That's why I love that you're going into the schools. It's a lot easier when they're younger. But stuff like this, you've added so much value for our podcast. We've never had one where it was specific to a topic like this, where I think we were able to add like literal tips and tricks for people. You kind of laid out some of those. So I cannot thank you enough for kind of running us through the gamut of that, knowing that you're in our backyard. It may be something that we've got to ping you again and have some kind of maybe learning kind of integration, because the fact is awareness of things like security has to become a part of, I think, almost everyone, not just, it doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter where you are in life, your normal curriculum, your daily curriculum. We're all using smartphones at scale. It's too prevalent for us to not have that benefit of a security mastermind like you, James. So I cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast with us. Like, this was so fun. It just like the time evaporated. I was like, oh, okay, we're trying to make sure the shows are X amount. I was like, okay, we could talk to you for days, because the tech, obviously there's a Hamilton connection, there's a tech connection, but it's amazing that you were able to give time to us today so that we could help people. The listeners of this episode will automatically have a takeaway from a few of the gems you gave. So thank you for being on today with us.
The pleasure was all mine. I had a blast. When the opportunity came up to be on your podcast and checking it out, I realized that I was not going to throw away my shot, and I had to be on here. So Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nicole, Gonzalez Cumberbatch with the Motherhood Village, and my tech tip is time blocking with Gmail calendar. I use that religiously. That is the only way I can get stuff done as a busy business owner, as a busy mom. So use your Gmail calendar for all things time blocking.
Thanks so much, Nicole, for that awesome tech tip from our interview on episode 13.
For detail and show notes about today's show, go to floridapodcastnetwork.com. And we want our community of Florida enthusiasts to grow. Join in with our superfans, the FPN Insiders, on Facebook, Clubhouse, and Good Pods. Just search for FPN Insiders. And of course, find us anytime at iwantclarity.com.
That was a super fun episode. I've really been enjoying. I know David and I go through these all the times. We're loving meeting these people and expanding all things tech in Central Florida. Please be sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Take me home tonight. I don't want to let you go till you see the light. You're welcome.